The sweetest moment of the night was also the harshest indictment. Truly, finally has someone consistent. And it isn't her father. Christine's Las Vegas book signing managed to accomplish something rare in the reality TV ecosystem. It looked like an actual family gathering, not a contractual obligation with a photo backdrop. The scene was straightforward enough. Christine arrived looking predictably polished, surrounded by an unusually accessible orbit of familiar faces. David, Hunter, with his girlfriend, and Logan with Michelle. Even podcaster Allison was present, noticeably without her husband, adding a small but telling detail to the social geometry of the event. The overall impression was not of a staged fan experience, but of a group that seemed genuinely comfortable mingling, talking, and letting the moment breathe. David, in particular, appeared exactly as expected. Talkative, relaxed, and socially fluent in a way that reads less new partner under pressure and more person who actually enjoys being here. He spoke openly about being close with Truly, and the emphasis landed where it should. Truly, finally, has an adult in her world who shows up consistently and with obvious warmth. That point matters because the contrast is hard to ignore. The older children may have complicated histories, but they at least have shared memories to point to. Truly, by comparison, was left without even that baseline. Until now. Then there was the matter of Cody, whose absence is becoming less a logistical detail and more a character trait. When Christine asked David who Cody was still in contact with, David's answer was blunt. No one. The only caveat was an offhand mention of Logan as a maybe, which is the kind of ambiguous footnote that invites a future podcast episode and the inevitable swirl of commentary. The broader implication was clear enough. Whatever relationships remain are either minimal or so delicate they can't be spoken about with certainty in a public line at a book signing. Nothing says healthy family structure quite like uncertainty over whether the father speaks to any of his children. The event's emotional tone, however, wasn't dominated by absence. It was dominated by support. Siblings showing up, chatting together, laughing together, and interacting with fans as though this was normal. The casual ease between Logan and Michelle, the friendliness of Hunter and his girlfriend, including the practical competence of moving people into better lighting for photos, and the general sense of togetherness, all communicated the same quiet message. This is what family looks like when the priority is actually showing up. Hunter's news added another layer. He is moving to Anchorage. The immediate reaction from others was not just surprise, but rapid, enthusiastic theorizing. Particularly the plausible idea that he landed a strong, well-paying role in Alaska, where demand for medical professionals is frequently discussed. The speculation sharpened into a more specific possibility: a military posting connected to Elmendorf Air Force Base in Anchorage. From there, the conversation drifted into the familiar mechanics of military scholarship and service agreements. Years owed matching years of education, sometimes extended by residencies or specialization, and the reality that unmarried members without children can be assigned anywhere. In other words, the move didn't read as random. It read like the logical outcome of a structured commitment. Amid all this, Christine did what Christine has learned to do well: engage warmly, be present, and make people feel seen. She asked how to pronounce a name so she could write it correctly. Small courtesy, large impact. She accepted a set of unopened Disney pins from the early 2000s, and when the obvious suggestion was grandkids, she redirected the thought toward Truly. It was a simple exchange, but it carried symbolic weight. Attention directed where it's been long overdue. As the evening wound down, the final image was almost comically wholesome for a franchise built on fracture. Logan, Michelle, Hunter, and Hunter's girlfriend standing together, talking animatedly, enjoying each other's company. No posturing, no visible tension, no performance, just a group acting like people who actually like each other. An unsettling concept for viewers conditioned to expect dysfunction as the primary plot device. The takeaway is not complicated. The family members who showed up looked genuine, engaged, and unexpectedly fun. The gathering felt more like celebration than spectacle. And hovering over it all was the unspoken conclusion that now barely needs stating. Walking away from a beautiful family is one thing. Walking away from the basic act of staying connected is quite another. Robyn didn't fear the family falling apart. She feared Cody apologizing to the wrong woman. Robyn's reaction to Cody's carefully rehearsed line, "I just want to be honest. I want to apologize," was a masterclass in unintended self-exposure. When she asked how things stood with Janelle and Cody repeated the same apology he had already delivered elsewhere, Robyn's face briefly registered pure panic. For a fleeting moment, it was unmistakable. She believed the apology was meant for her. The expression suggested a rapid internal calculus. Had something intimate happened? Was a reunion imminent? Or was a long-guarded secret about to be revealed? Whatever the precise fear, the illusion of calm collapsed instantly. That reaction spoke volumes about the so-called dream of harmonious plural marriage and family reunification. The anxiety was not rooted in empathy or concern for healing relationships. It was territorial, possessive, and alarmed by the possibility that attention or intimacy might be redirected. Ironically, within the framework of their spiritual arrangements at the time, nothing would technically qualify as betrayal, yet the response betrayed something far more telling. An expectation of exclusivity in a system that publicly denies it. The moment was unintentionally comedic, aided by Cody's well-established inability to communicate like a functional adult. This is, after all, the same man who once theatrically grabbed an interviewer's leg to perform what turned out to be a misplaced reenactment of affection meant for someone else. Subtlety has never been his strength, and clarity is apparently an optional accessory. What made the scene particularly effective was that it did not feel staged. Robyn's reactions rarely do. Acting would require restraint, and restraint is not her strong suit. The exaggerated facial expressions, the restless eyebrows, the perpetual look of manufactured innocence cracking under pressure. None of it suggests performance. If anything, the camera has been quietly documenting a lack of control rather than a calculated act. Time has not been especially kind to this carefully curated persona. The styling choices add unnecessary years. The presentation feels dated, and the visual strain only reinforces the sense of someone clinging to an image of relevance and desirability that is steadily slipping away. Yet, physical aging is the least interesting part of the transformation. What truly registers is how manipulation, resentment, and vindictiveness have hardened into something impossible to conceal. The shy, gentle figure once presented bears little resemblance to what now appears on screen. Her visible disgust when Cody outlined his plan to make the rounds with apologies was particularly satisfying. The notion that he might extend contrition or attention elsewhere was clearly unwelcome. The discomfort was palpable, and the reversal unmistakable. The favored position no longer looks secure. The pedestal appears unsteady, and the realization seems to have landed in real time. In the end, the scene offered a rare moment of narrative honesty. Without a word spoken, it revealed jealousy disguised as virtue, control masked as vulnerability, and a polygamous ideal sustained only so long as it benefits one person. Watching that certainty falter, even briefly, was the most revealing performance of all. The most sexual scenes this season are the clearest proof nothing is happening off-camera. The sudden insistence on advertising what allegedly turns Robyn on is not bold television. It is an endurance test. The overwhelming takeaway is not curiosity or intrigue, but a firm and collective disinterest. The fixation is juvenile, awkwardly staged, and carries the unmistakable scent of producer-mandated desperation rather than organic intimacy. The timing alone exposes the performance. This exaggerated display of flirtation and sexual bravado arrives conveniently after a season spent watching Christine and David behave like two people who actually enjoy each other's company. Rather than allowing that contrast to exist naturally, the response appears to be a frantic attempt to rebrand Robyn and Cody as a passionate power couple. The result is less competition and more secondhand embarrassment. The narrative insists on selling erotic vitality while simultaneously revealing its absence. Anyone compelled to narrate their own desirability in such detail is not projecting confidence. They are compensating. The forced growls, the exaggerated reactions, the clumsy innuendo delivered over dinner conversations no one asked to witness. All of it reads as theatrical overreach. It is not playful. It is painfully performative. Even the supposed foundation of attraction collapses under scrutiny. The claim that devotion to fatherhood is the ultimate aphrodisiac would land better if the evidence supported it. Instead, it highlights the disconnect between the persona being sold and the behavior viewers have spent years watching. The performance demands belief, while actively undermining it. Cody's self-regard remains predictably central. The framing of intimacy continues to orbit his ego, his physicality, and his need for validation. Any pretense that this dynamic is mutually fulfilling strains credibility. The overexposure of mundane moments, complete with labored exertion and theatrically exaggerated reactions, adds nothing except discomfort. It is not intimacy. It is exhibitionism without allure. What makes the entire endeavor particularly baffling is the refusal to lean into what might actually work. A reserved, traditional presentation would at least align with the long-cultivated image. Instead, the show insists on pitching sex kitten and stud archetypes that neither participant convincingly inhabits. The acting falters, the tone misfires, and the attempt to appear seductive collapses into parody. Ultimately, this campaign does not elevate the characters or the series. It diminishes both. The spectacle feels less like confidence and more like insecurity amplified for airtime. An awkward performance that serves no one. Least of all, the family members forced to exist within its blast radius. Stop believing the sad version of that answer. The first reaction was the truth, and it was pure terror. Robyn's face answered the question long before her mouth could assemble the public relations version. When asked what would happen if a sister-wife wanted to return, the immediate response was not complicated, not painful, and certainly not hopeful. It was pure, unfiltered alarm, an instinctive, emphatic refusal that landed with all the subtlety of a slammed door. The headshake came first. The terror flashed next. Then, once the reality of being seen set in, the performance began. And what a performance! The pivot into disappointment was meant to look like emotional depth. Hopes raised, heart bruised, dignity maintained. Instead, it read like a hasty rewrite after the audience already saw the original draft. The problem with reflexive honesty is that it arrives before the script. Robyn's expression moved faster than her narrative, and the gap between the two was the entire story. Naturally, the scene didn't survive intact. The edit was conspicuous, a cut between two answers, as if the production politely paused to allow a more camera-ready sentiment to be installed. The threat to leave, dramatic, wounded, and strategically timed, didn't communicate vulnerability so much as it broadcast damage control. Fake sadness is always easiest to spot when it arrives immediately after visible panic. What made the moment especially revealing was not just the refusal itself, but the reason it seemed to register as catastrophic. Robyn framed hope as dangerous, as though the mere suggestion of reconciliation could tear open the fabric of reality. That would be easier to accept if hope had not been marketed so aggressively to others for years. The hypocrisy is almost elegant, encouraging Mary to keep believing, keep waiting, keep staying emotionally tethered, yet treating the possibility of someone actually returning as an existential threat. Hope, apparently, is safe when it keeps someone in limbo and out of the way. Hope becomes dangerous when it might rearrange the seating chart. Then came the line about coming back to the family, delivered with the quiet assumption that the family now equals Robyn and Cody. It was a remarkably tidy redefinition. Two people standing in the wreckage, declaring themselves the structure. The inconvenient reality is that the family didn't leave a thriving unit. The unit fractured, and what remains is not a grand household, but a couple occupying the title. The underlying emotion wasn't heartbreak. It was indignation. Shock that the question was even asked, as if the premise itself was offensive.
The idea that a wife might return implies that the story is not finished, that the outcome is not locked. That implication clearly wasn't accounted for. Panic followed, because panic is what happens when a storyline threatens to escape its assigned ending. This is the essence of the character. The instinct to seize the victim role the moment control is threatened, paired with a chronic need to manage how every reaction is perceived. The head says no, the face says absolutely not, and the mouth eventually arrives with a carefully packaged sorrow meant to sound noble rather than territorial. The subtext could not have been louder. No one is coming back because someone has already decided the competition is over. The biggest lie on this show isn't what Robyn says. It's what the adults around her keep pretending to believe. Robyn Brown's most consistent contribution to the polygamy conversation has never been lived experience, insight, or even basic self-awareness. It has been volume. Early seasons play like a long-running audition for the role of authority on a lifestyle she didn't actually live, delivered with the confidence of someone who mistakes being the newest wife for being the most qualified witness. And the room, astonishingly, often indulged it. The spectacle is simple. A woman who did not grow up practicing polygamy, did not live it as a plural wife, and yet speaks as though she's been field testing the doctrine for decades, while the adults around her nod along like they're listening to the final exam review. Meanwhile, Christine, whose family background is repeatedly framed as polygamy royalty, who was raised in it and lived it, exists in the same space as a kind of inconvenient resume Robyn prefers not to acknowledge. The contrast is almost too neat, almost. Of course, expertise is not the only costume in Robyn's wardrobe. She also positions herself as the moral tribunal, the authority on divorce, the authority on parents hurting children by speaking about the other parent, the authority on the lifelong damage of an absent father leaving a hole in a child's heart. It is an impressive range for someone whose guidance arrives with the serene certainty of a person who appears to believe wisdom can be acquired through sheer insistence. This would all merely be irritating if it weren't so strategically timed. Robyn's persona reliably drifts back to center whenever attention threatens to land elsewhere. In a family system already built on competition and grievance, she repeatedly redirects the focus toward herself, less as a participant and more as the appointed spokesperson, the narrative engine, the star. The logic is transparent. If the show is about polygamy, then the story must also be about the person who most benefits from defining what polygamy is supposed to mean. That self-centering is not subtle. It is habitual. Even gestures framed as generosity can carry the aftertaste of leverage. The offer to carry a child for Mary plays, in this light, less like compassion and more like a carefully staged arrangement.
one that could have positioned Robyn as savior, gatekeeper, and permanent creditor in the emotional economy of the family. The implied message is unmistakable. Gratitude is expected, and debt is forever. Then there is the small matter of truthfulness, a topic Robyn treats with the same flexible devotion she brings to every other principle. The whiplash is particularly evident in her own shy, tender, uncomfortable narrative, delivered as a season-long identity, only to be reversed with stunning ease when the moment calls for it. One episode's delicate aversion becomes the next episode's enthusiastic endorsement. Flirting is suddenly not only acceptable, but practically the missing ingredient that would have kept everyone together. A family collapses, but the real culprit is apparently insufficient flirtation. The analysis is as convenient as it is absurd. This is where Cody's role becomes both predictable and baffling. He describes Robyn with glowing adjectives that clash violently with what is plainly observable. And he does so with the certainty of a man narrating a fantasy he cannot afford to abandon. The cost of sustaining that illusion is not abstract. It is the slow demolition of his family relationships, traded away in exchange for the Robyn narrative. Robyn as victim, Robyn as peacemaker, Robyn as misunderstood expert, Robyn as the one true wife with the sacred, secret covenant. The more reality contradicts it, the more fiercely he clings.
And perhaps that is the true tragedy, if the word can be used for something so relentlessly self-inflicted. Robyn's fragile ego needs constant reinforcement, and Cody provides it like a devotional practice. Together, that ego and that devotion become a wrecking ball. The family doesn't implode because polygamy is hard. It implodes because a single storyline becomes a power structure, and a single person's need to be central becomes everyone else's obligation. Even the background details underscore the performance. There is acknowledgement that Robyn's mother did, at one point, become a second wife after leaving Robyn's biological father, marrying a next-door neighbor and best friend's husband, with the kind of complicated family entanglement plural communities often normalize. There is also the reminder that plural arrangements in that world can involve separation across states and fractured relationships between wives. Fine, those realities exist. The point is that Robyn still did not live plural marriage as a wife, and yet insists on speaking as though she authored the handbook, which is the enduring irony. The loudest voice in the room keeps selling expertise as identity, moral certainty as compassion, and shifting stories as sincerity. The family paid for it anyway. Never trust a Next Time on Sister Wives teaser. It's not a preview, it's a hostage note. The preview promised fireworks. The episode delivered a bicycle. After an entire week of manufactured anticipation, the hour opens with a familiar bait and switch. Extensive time devoted to Mary and a conveniently unnamed companion on a bike ride, sprinkled with brief flashes of David, Christine, and Cody, just enough to imply that something consequential might occur if patience and standards are lowered far enough. When the long-awaited sit-down finally arrives, it plays exactly like a staged mediation exercise designed to sound profound while saying nothing. The line about wanting someone to be able to heal lands with the sterile warmth of a corporate HR email. David begins to frame his perspective, briefly, cautiously, and with the unmistakable implication that a man-to-man assessment is coming, only to be cut off before the thought can take shape. Naturally, a moment of potential clarity cannot be permitted to develop into actual content. Christine, meanwhile, supplies the only genuine material through her facial expressions, the kind of restrained disbelief that has become the series' most reliable narrator. Cody performs at full capacity, polished, practiced, and transparently artificial, projecting the sort of self-regard so consistent it practically begs for academic study. The setup is obvious: an overdue confrontation, a long simmering reckoning, a long-promised tea spill. The viewer braces for impact. Then
the episode ends. Not with resolution, not with escalation, not even with the courtesy of a cliffhanger that contains information. Simply ends, mid-snack, mid-expectation, before anything is allowed to happen. The Next Time On segment appears, and with it comes the show's signature philosophy. Why deliver one conversation in one episode when it can be stretched into 2, 3, or an entire geological era? This is not a news strategy. The Mary Catfish storyline was treated like a historical event that required multiple seasons of commemoration. COVID became a narrative atmosphere, less a period of time than a permanent personality trait. Now, the series has perfected the art of taking one interaction and rationing it out like a wartime commodity. The divorce has been final for years, 4, possibly 5, and yet the production insists on running an apology tour that seems engineered to outlast civilization itself. And while this apology pageant is being padded into infinity, the actual material that justified tuning in gets waved away with astonishing speed. The Coyote Pass endgame, supposedly the season's core conflict, receives little to no meaningful attention. The practical questions that might resemble reality television stakes are left unanswered. What finally prompted the lot name changes? Why NDAs entered the conversation? What role attorneys played? And what leverage or pressure actually shaped the outcome? The show gestures toward drama, then refuses to show its mechanisms, as though details are a luxury and accountability is an optional add-on. Instead, the narrative is propped up with filler presented as storyline, Cody's workout as character development, Mary's egg mishap treated as a plot point, Janelle sharing yet another dinner with the same circle of interchangeable companions. It is not subtle. It is not clever.
It is the unmistakable feel of a season built to occupy airtime rather than advance events. The emptiness has become systemic. For multiple seasons now, episodes routinely reach the 45-minute mark with the startling realization that nothing has occurred. No movement, no consequence, no change. The structure explains the problem. The family is geographically scattered, and the show appears to function with limited coverage, following each person briefly and separately. The result is an anthology of isolated fragments. One day here, a single lunch there, a recurring dinner with the same friends, an obligatory Robyn outburst. Each segment presented as though it represents a meaningful chapter rather than production scrambling for footage. When the family lived near each other, interconnected storylines created the illusion, and sometimes the reality, of time passing and tensions colliding. After COVID, episodes could span months, but at least the time compression suggested momentum. Now the pacing is inverted. An entire episode covers a handful of uneventful moments across different locations, stretched thin to fill an hour, and still somehow feels underwritten. The obvious fix is also the one reality television has relied on since the beginning of reality television. Force proximity. If the producers wanted a functional show, they would engineer collective scenes, trips, staged gatherings, structured conflicts, any contrived family event that compels shared space and real-time friction. That may be artificial, but it would at least be watchable. The current model is worse. Not only manufactured, but also inert, and yet the cycle continues. Despite the repeated disappointment, the viewing persists. An ongoing relationship with a series that offers less each season while insisting, with unwavering confidence, that the audience will wait for the next episode to finally deliver what the last one refused to provide. When kids ring the bell and run, the real danger isn't the prank. It's the adult who thinks he's the main character in a siege. Cody's latest domestic upgrade has apparently come with a complimentary neighborhood tradition. Children sprinting to the door, ringing the bell, and fleeing as though they've uncovered state secrets. The local report claims police were called, which is either a stunning misuse of public resources or the most predictable escalation imaginable.
when a man built almost entirely out of ego detects the faintest tremor of inconvenience. To be clear, this is not a mysterious new threat. It is the same old prank that has survived generations under an absurd variety of names. Proof that childhood mischief is eternal, and adults will spend the rest of their lives arguing about terminology as if it changes the outcome. The prank itself is banal. Ring, run, laugh, repeat. The enthusiasm is real, the planning is non-existent, and the sense of triumph is wildly disproportionate to the achievement. And yet, context matters, especially when the context is a gun owner with a long history of questionable judgment. There is an uncomfortable truth hovering over this quaint little rite of passage. People have been shot for doing it. The prank relies on the assumption that adults will respond with mild annoyance, not fear, rage, or trigger-happy bravado. That assumption is increasingly optimistic, particularly at a house where common sense has never been a defining architectural feature. Naturally, the ego factor turns a childish nuisance into a potential crusade. A person with a sturdier grip on reality might see this for what it is: bored kids chasing a cheap thrill. Cody, however, is unlikely to process it as random. A man who treats ordinary life events like personal betrayals will interpret a doorbell as a provocation and a sprinting child as an organized campaign. Expect theatrics. Expect posturing. Expect a solemn performance about protecting the little ones, as though the greatest danger here is not adult overreaction. It also raises the question of practical safeguards, an obvious one, which makes the absence feel on brand. If this is such an intolerable intrusion, why no gate? Why no barrier, no deterrent, no basic perimeter management? Perhaps there are more urgent budget priorities. Home security may have to wait while funds are allocated elsewhere. Like whatever bizarre household spending category requires a dedicated doll budget large enough to crowd out routine improvements. As for involving the police, that depends on what version of the prank is happening. A standard ring and run is irritating but trivial. However, if it has evolved into the more aggressive trend where the door is kicked hard enough to cause damage, calling authorities becomes less dramatic and more reasonable. Mischief becomes vandalism the moment property is threatened, and it is difficult to argue for kids being kids when the prank starts resembling forced entry practice. So no, the children should not be doing it. Yes, it can be funny, in the way minor chaos is funny when it remains minor. But it is also the kind of harmless tradition that stops being harmless the second an adult decides to respond like a vigilante, a hero, or a victim in search of an audience. And if there is one thing history suggests about Cody, it is that he rarely misses an opportunity to audition for all three. That "rawr" line wasn't quirky. It was a confession, just packaged as cute. Robyn's so-called "rawr" moment, apparently activated by Cody being a good dad, lands with all the credibility of a sales pitch delivered in a parking lot. A good father, according to this logic, is one who excels at a very specific specialty, treating Robyn's children like the only children. That's not parenting. That's selective investment, with a generous side of abandonment for everyone else. Because the public record of Cody's good dad behavior is not exactly overflowing. The greatest hits include prioritizing favorites, routinely disappointing his other children, and managing to make a serious surgery for one of them look like an inconvenient scheduling conflict. If that's the standard for fatherhood, then the bar isn't low, it's underground. Naturally, the moment is packaged with the kind of forced cheer that feels less like family television and more like a timeshare presentation. The sudden pivot into a meeting with Christine and David comes off as an over-rehearsed setup. Perform enthusiasm. Push the product. Insist everyone enjoy it immediately. It's not warmth, it's theater. And then comes the real masterpiece. presenting Cody's good dad status as something to celebrate while fully aware that estranged adult children who have heard every excuse and lived every omission will also hear it. That isn't obliviousness. That is salt applied with intention. The comfort level required to say this out loud on a platform with a large international audience suggests a person who has been rewarded for narrating cruelty as confidence. David's intervention, however, cuts through the performance with surgical efficiency. Start with the kids. Not the speeches, not the image rehabilitation tour. The kids. It is the one line that exposes how absurd the good dad claim really is. Because good fathers do not need to be coached into beginning with their own children. Robyn's dynamic is also painfully consistent. Enjoyment seems to require an audience, preferably one that's envious or wounded. It's not enough to be content. Someone else must be made smaller in the process. That extends to children, who are treated less as human beings and more as obstacles to manage. When the possibility of Cody reconnecting with a child arises, particularly one outside her favored circle, the victim posture appears on cue, conveniently redirecting attention and blocking resolution. The claims of pushing him to talk to his kids collapse under the visible pattern of interference. More importantly, the children are not fooled. They see who is chosen. They see who is neglected. They see the hierarchy. This is the clearest evidence that the plural family narrative was never the point. The arrangement is treated as legitimate only insofar as it feeds Robyn's needs and secures advantages for her household. The rest of the family exists as background, useful when it flatters the story, disposable when it complicates it. And the long-term forecast is not particularly flattering. A life built on control and grievance does not age well. It produces dependence, not independence, proximity, not maturity. The consequence is a self-made prison, a household trained to orbit one person's insecurity, with the outside world cast as either rival or threat. Even milestones that are supposed to be joyful, like becoming a grandparent, may arrive slowly, if at all, when the children are not raised to become self-sufficient adults. In the end, the most damning element isn't the hypocrisy, though it is spectacular. It's the inevitability. With this personality type, there is no winning. Attendance is demanded. Absence is punished. Compliance is never enough. Boundaries are treated as betrayal.
The only stable outcome is resentment, and the only reliable reward is the quiet realization that pity eventually replaces envy. Subscribe.